to the Kingdomhood Conversation on live on YouTube and also, yeah, on YouTube. So make sure you click like, so that way I can keep giving you content, keep giving you updates. For those of you who are tuned in on Facebook to the Kingdomhood Conversation, thanks for tuning in. First of all, I want to say I'm wishing all the men out there happy Father's Day. Um, this is a time that you are recognized for your greatness. This is a time that you are recognized for your sacrifice. This is your time for being a leader and being that person that your kids can look at and admire, and being a person that whether you're married, got a girlfriend, or maybe you have a baby mama, whatever the situation is, that they look at you as a man and you are respected because your hard work and all the sacrifice you makes to be a good father. Salute you, kings that are doing the damn thing with your kids. Happy Father's Day to you. So we're back for another Kingdomhood conversation. I'm not going to be too long because it is Father's Day, and this is the time that I don't want to take up too much because you guys are probably with your families. But I had it that I was going to do a show at this time, so I want to go ahead and just bring content, even though it's Father's Day. You guys probably with your kids enjoying yourself, so maybe you can look at this some other time. Last week I talked about what is a kingdomhood, because I got this vision. We all have a dream, right? It could be far-fetched, it could seem crazy to people, but when you have a dream and something was put on your heart, that's what it is. It's something that's on your heart and something you have to go with and pursue. And mine has been for the last year or so, especially during the pandemic, just really just in my mind thinking about what I wanted, how do I want to get involved in building something in the community and helping improve the conditions of African American people, and just seeing on the backdrop of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and all others that have been murdered. It's like, when does it stop? We protested, we've lobbied, we voted, we petitioned, we've got laws changed, only to see incremental benefit of that. But nothing has really changed the game where Black men feel safe. There's a city where they can call their own, where they don't have to worry about walking down the street and getting harassed by police, where they don't have to go into dilapidated schools, where they see business opportunities in Mecca within their own community. It just doesn't exist. But my vision was to actually build one like we had in Black Wall Street, like we had in Florida, in Rosewood, like we had Sweet Albany, like we had Brownsville in Georgia, like we had in North Carolina. These were prominent Black cities that had their own bus stations and had their own hotels and had their own taxi cabs and things like that, and law firms and doctors' offices. And the churches were about building that community. They weren't in the community just collecting dues, but they were actually in the community doing work. So there was a time when we had a kingdomhood. And I think it's really time for us to bring that back. I mean, you can call it kingdomhood, Black Panther, call it Wakanda, call it Black Town, whatever you want to call it. But a city that was built by us for us. Now, this clearly does not mean no other races can live in the city, but it clearly means that it's owned and controlled by us. Why not? Other races have them. And I'll say this time and time again, other races have them, right? Other races have cities where they own and control. And then when we go to school and get a college degree, or we, begin to advance in life, the first thing we do is move into a city where that's controlled by people that don't look like us. So we should be able to have the same thing. A race has actually built this country, and a race that actually puts to this current day $2 trillion in an economy. But yet we still own less than 1/2 of 1% of America's wealth. So that's why last week I talked about economics. I want to touch on that just a little bit, and then I'm going to jump over to politics. That's the second floor of having a protective, secure African American community. So I'm gonna touch back on the finance part. So I talked a little bit about, for those of you who didn't watch last week, I talked a little bit about the first floor of building a community is you got to have money, and this is the primary asset commodity, whatever you want to call it, that black communities don't have. That's why they're called hoods, because there's no resources. If you look back in history, you got the Black Wall Street, all the attention's been paid to that now. That was a city of opportunity. They had resources. So the black people in that community were able to be employed. That's why there was less crime, less violence, and all that type of stuff, because you got people who have jobs. If you put men to work, if they can wake up every morning and see opportunity within their defined city, they'll be less apt to sell drugs. They'll be less apt to get in gangs because there's opportunity within that city. When they go to the grocery store, that's owned by a black man. They go to the auto parts store, it's owned by a black man. They go to the grocery store, it's owned by somebody that looked like them. If there's a hotel in their particular city, it's ran by, it's owned by a successful African-American male that can offer them jobs. When there's revitalization in their communities and there's investment coming in, it doesn't have to be all black dollars, but that investment, say for example, I was just talking to my son today who lives in Dallas, and he was talking about, and that's happened here. If you notice downtown LA, where it's all foreign investment, that's all Chinese money. And the American people, and this is white or black or any race, a lot of us are locked out of that. So if you have your own community where you own and control everything, of course foreign people can come and invest in that community, but they can't gentrify because we have an anti-gentrification rule. And any money that they invest is going to have to be put into the black bank that I talked about last week, that within the black community, there are black banks where all the businesses and all the local residents put their money into this bank, right? So the bank can actually buy and invest in commercial real estate, invest in building hotels, invest, like they'll be able to give loans back to the people who, the people in that community want a loan to open up an hotel or open up a liquor store or open up a barbershop or open up a grocery store, a hospital, whatever it may be. The bank in that community, since you have our own black bank in that community, you can step out your house and go a mile down the road, 2 miles down the road, and walk into a bank where somebody looks like you, and they can give you a loan. Now, again, there's qualifications to it. You got to qualify for the money, but you have a black bank in your community. We have no banks in our communities. The only thing we have in our communities is the white banks. So, I mean, we're not, and usually those are our drive, but it's a white bank. And this is why all this gentrification is happening, because you got all these foreign people. You have, sometimes it's just actually just white real estate developers that come into a black community, and then buy up everything. And then what happens? The black people get moved out. It is the modern day black removal. It's called black removal. So the old black removal was, if you want to know where black cities were, this is what you do. Any of these major highways that you see, in all these major towns across America, those used to be black cities. All these national parks that you see, a lot of those used to be black communities. Some of them may have been, Indian communities as well. But where you see all the public domain, a lot of that stuff was black communities that they came in and removed black folks out. An example here locally is the 10 freeway. There was a city called Sugar Hill in the west side on the 10 freeway, somewhere around Bundy and National, called Sugar Hill. That was a thriving black community. What they do, and this is in California. This is not in Alabama, Texas, Mississippi. We talking California, which is pretty much as passive aggressive racism. They ran a highway, the 10 freeway, right through a black neighborhood. Here's why I say that. You cannot find me one highway in America that was ran through a white suburb. I guarantee you can't find one. You can't find a national park. You can't find a freeway that was ran through a white neighborhood, because they don't do that. They don't push white people out there. They don't push white people. There's no such thing as a white removal act where they push white people out their neighborhoods. Okay, so that only happens to black folks, and that's what happened to a lot of our towns too. They either were bombed, or they ran highways, or they snatched the land, did national park, and claimed eminent domain. Okay, so that's what happened in a lot of our black cities. But up to this point, that's why there's a lack of. But now, I think with the opportunity of building a new city, I think that would be a little bit hard for them to do. It just actually just they can't bomb it and they can't blow it up like they did in Philadelphia, like they did in Tulsa, like they did in Sweet Albany, that was in Georgia. They removed these cities like they did in North Carolina, like they did in Illinois, because of social media. There's a spotlight on this stuff now, so it'll be a little bit hard for them to do. But the underhand passive aggressive program, the underhand program, is they do the new thing is gentrification. That's the new black removal. Like they're doing in Inglewood. They're running a train down Crenshaw Boulevard, right down that city, where they know the predominantly blacks are. You think they're building a train because they love Negroes? Absolutely not. Matter of fact, on Crenshaw used to have a moratorium where the building can only be so high. That's why, if you know Crenshaw, if you can go from where I grew up on 119th and Crenshaw, you can go all the way down to Crenshaw and 23rd, and you won't see any high rises, not one, because they had a moratorium against that. That moratorium has now been removed. So now, in 10 years, Crenshaw is going to look like the Mid-Wilshire district. I guarantee you. Now, if any of you guys had been in LA in the 90s, you'll know that down on 60th and Crenshaw, I think it's around 50th and Crenshaw, you saw that there's that wall with that painting all on the wall there. Well, that used to be a part in the 90s when I was coming up. 80s, 90s, that's the place where the gangs used to hang out. Everybody used to sit there and talk and laugh with their low riders and all that stuff. And now you're seeing the change. That's not happening anymore because that's all been getting gentrified. So that's the new removal program. So we pretty don't have any place to call our own. So that's why it's so important to get back to building a black city. And the only way that can happen is you got to have money. I mean, we can argue about politics, which I'm going to touch on here in a minute. And we can argue on rights and equal rights and all that type of stuff. None of that is going to help. King said it best. King has two famous quotes about civil rights. Okay. He said, "What did I integrate my people into?" In other words, he was fighting for integration, but he integrated his people into a race, into a society that did not want them, and also did not give them any resources to survive. Yeah, there's been integration, but you're not integrating into it equally. You're integrating into a system or a community where it's owned and controlled by all the white people. You have no resources or no chance to own anything. Then one of King's famous quotes is, I believe I led my people into a burning building." So he was saying, I fought all this time, since 1955, since he started, to 1968, since he was killed. But 1967, because this is when he changed. He started Operation Breadbasket in 1967. Operation Breadbasket was supposed to be a protest where he's going to go down to Washington, and they were going to camp out in front of Washington until they came out with an economic stimulus plan to help people of color. But it was white people as well down there. So Operation Bread, and ultimately that's what got him killed. But he had realized that he fought for all these, the Voting Rights Acts and the Civil Rights Act and all this stuff and all this to tear down Jim Crow. But black people were still poor and suffering. So he's like, I did all this and we still poor. What's the point of all of it? So King recognized that didn't work. You got James Brown that talked about that. James Brown, a singer, that talked about that. That said, we need to get our own planes. We need to get our own businesses. We need to get our own communities. We need to get our own investments. Even James Brown said it. There are a lot of other black people who've come up, through the civil rights era. Marcus Garvey was saying, spoke to this, is that you got to have your own. You got to be able to own and control your own destiny, by having the dollars to finance your own stuff. You can't get anywhere if you have other people financing it. That's the whole point of money. You're begging your oppressor to give you to finance you or to change the system so you can fit in. That hasn't happened yet. And it probably never will. You've seen all the stuff we've been through, and very little has changed. So that's the point where I touched on finance last week. Having black banks, having and make sure we're investing. The local residents are investing in their local communities and putting their money in a black bank, and that black bank be the financial resources for building of businesses in that particular community. Because where there's business and where there's opportunity, there's going to be less crime. There's going to be less violence. Any psychologist, any psychologist or sociologist will tell you, whether it's white or black or no matter what the race is, where there's no resources, there's high crime and violence. And the black communities throughout this country have no resources. The white ones do, the Asians do, the East Indians do, the Arabs do. Okay, they're no better people than us. Here is the key. The problem with what I see with black people. Y'all correct me if you think I'm wrong. White people are they work harder than us? Asian people, Indian people, whatever race, are they smarter than us? Are they more creative than us? No. But you know where they are better than us? They out-organize us. I think it was Marcus Garvey that said, the way to defeat the black man is disorganization. They keep us disorganized. We're fighting over a Democrat and a Republican. You got black folks on the Republican side, black folks on the Democrat, fighting each other over something you don't own and control. We won't work together. We won't come together and build something because we ready to, because I don't know, maybe some of them just have slave mentalities. They don't want to offend their white business partner, owner, or boss, whatever you want to call it. But we are so disorganized, and we've been tossed in slavery to work against each other when all the other races are working together. I don't think other races are getting special treatment any more than we could get if we came together. I don't think they're born with more opportunity than us. I mean, of course, there's outliers because you have some people who are born into a rich family, but for the most part, I think because they're more organized than us. They pool their resources together and they build a community. You go to every major city and there's a Chinatown. I asked you this question. Has there ever been a highway built through a Chinatown in America? No. How about a white suburb? No. How about a Jewish community? Have you seen a highway built through their community? Or they take their property and build a park or something? No, just us. Just us, because they know they can do it and get away with it. And part of it is because of fear. They're worried about really black people becoming in power and things like that. That could be part of it. But the other is because we are disorganized. So we really have to lock in and hone in on our finances and investing in our own communities, having black banks and having those black banks reinvest in the communities. If foreign investment comes in, they want to build in our community, sure. They can build a business, start a business. You could put maybe a Walmart in the black community. That's fine. But you're going to hire people in that community to run that Walmart. And then what you're going to do is a certain amount of your revenue from your investment goes back into that community. So you have to have a philanthropic ambition where you're pumping, because black people are buying from you. So you got to take that money, some of your profit, and reinvest that back into the community. You can build a boys' home, a boys and girls club. You can invest in that, a YMCA. You can support after-school programs, support Pop Warner football, where you buy all the kids' equipment. Have what's that I'm looking for? Parks that are well equipped parks and things like that, like they do all the other communities. Yeah. So that's what we got to have. And we've done it before. But let me go back. The reason why we were able to do it before, to build a Tulsa, to build a Rosewood, to build a Sweet Albany in Georgia, to build a black business mecca in North Carolina, because this is all we had. All we had was the other. I don't care if you had a PhD or a GED. All I had was you, because we all had to be in the same neighborhood. We couldn't move to white areas. They wouldn't let us. And at that time, you had to have a blacksmith. You had to have a black plumber. You had to have a black electrician. You had to have a black builder. You had to have a black attorney. You had to have a black doctor uh, because you couldn't go to the white neighborhoods. So we were able to build all these communities because we had all we had was each other. When integration happened, all that went away. I really believe this. They integrated us so they can watch us. Rosewood is and Tulsa are the biggest examples of that. When we were building our community, they got scared. They didn't know what we were doing, what we were talking about, what we were planning. So they bombed it. But they said, well, hey, we can integrate. We can let a few of them in the community because then we can better watch them. We can let them in, invite them over Sunday dinner to see what they're thinking. Keep an eye on them. And that's why you got all these black Republicans. The black Republicans are going to report back to their owners. And some of the black Democrats do report back to the owner, tell them everything we're doing, or to make sure they subdue us long enough or keep us from really building what we need to be successful. Because you won't hear any of these black, the Al Sharptons, or any of these black so-called leaders talking about, forget this. We're just going to build our own community. When somebody gets shot, they're up there front and center, of course. But they're all being paid for. Al Sharpton gets money from some of these white-controlled organizations. So how are you going to be financed by the very people you're fighting against? Just food for thought. I'm just sharing you what I'm thinking. That how you go. The only way you can be truly free and really be, if you really want to fight injustice, first of all, you got to make sacrifices. You cannot take money from the very people that you're fighting. You have a lot of these black think tanks that get together and talk about black rights and they want to help black people, and then turn around, it's being financed by Wells Fargo. It's being financed by Walmart. The very people who are part of the oppressive system that's keeping you in the position you're in the first place. Yeah. So the problem is, with that, in a nutshell, the reason why we are having a problem, we don't finance a damn thing. We vote. We live in communities and we shop. Put $2 trillion in an economy. Hell, we spent $12 billion on hair, $4 billion on Jordan, $3 billion on liquor. So we're going to spend money. But what do we own and control? 1/2 of 1% of America's wealth. The same it was when we were freed in 1865. That's a damn shame. You drive an economy by your buying, but you own less than 1/2 of 1% of America's wealth. And you wonder why we're getting treated the way we are. You wonder why they're still killing us in the street. You wonder why they don't, what the Republicans are doing is stopping black people from voting. Because they know we're not going to organize and mobilize. Until that's done, very little is going to change with this. That's just my thing. Y'all can give me your opinion and let me know what you think, but I don't see anything changing until we build our own community. So that was what I was talking about last week. So let's go over to politics. I am not here to talk about politics, about which party is better, Democrat or Republican. They both historically have done things that are bad, that are against, and that really set black folks back and harm black folks. And both parties throughout the history of this country have done some good things for black people. So, I pretty much wash my hands of either one. It's like, unless you're doing something for black folks, you have a black agenda with your Democrat, Republican, hey, I'm voting for you. But in the kingdomhood, we got the banks, we got the economics. That's floor one. Floor two, politicians. Now, in a city, you got to have public policy. Okay, because the reason why politicians are important is because, they're the ones who take care of the utilities. They're the ones that deal with homelessness. Those are the ones who deal with, your parks, fixing potholes, the overall look and feel of the city. Those are the ones who, go to the county and they go to the state and ask for, if there's going to be public schools or things like that, public initiatives. They are your face to the county and to the state, going to the county supervisor, going to the state to represent you, to get resources in that community that you need to help keep a safe community, building a community. They're going to be involved in, of course, the courts and police, which we'll talk about next week. But the politicians are very, very important. The chief complaint about a politician, and this is especially black ones, that you vote them in office and they don't do a damn thing. Well, a lot of that is true, um, whether it's Democrat or Republican. But here's why they don't do anything. Again, it goes back to economics. They always say follow the money. My mom used to always tell me, bullshit runs the marathon, and money runs the world. And man, that is so true. If if you don't finance the politicians, they're not going to do what you want them to do. Think about this for a minute. Yeah, black people vote. I think it's 80% of black people vote Democrat. Yeah, they get your vote. And you wonder why they don't do anything, because any politician is going to be absolutely committed, and is really going to do what his donors do. The people who are financing the politician are the ones that get their agendas passed, and most of those are lobbyists. The lobbyists come in, they say, we want you to vote this way, and we're going to put money into your campaign. If you don't vote this way, we're going to primary you. We're going to find another candidate. We're going to finance him and run him against you. So the people, I think it was Joseph Stalin, said, the people who vote have no power, but the people who count the votes have all the power. Okay. So the people actually counting the votes and the people who are tied into the politicians financially, those are the ones that have all the power. So in a safe city, a Kingdom Hood, a Wakanda, a Black Town, another Rose, whatever, the city, the businesses are financing the politicians. We are paying you. We're going to finance your campaign. We're going to do that, whichever, at the end of the day, they could be all black, but they could be other. They could be white, just depends, I don't know. But you're financed by the city, these black organizations. You're financed by them. So since we're financing, you're going to do what the hell we want you to do. That's the way politics is done. Black people, we got to learn as African-American people. We have to get into politics to protect and stop getting into politics to get. We go to town halls. You got the mayor there, and we're saying, well, what you gonna do? That's the favorite thing black folks say. What you gonna do for what you gonna do? What you gonna do? Nothing. Well, I ain't gonna do nothing because you don't finance a damn thing. You are not financing my campaign. You are not having fundraisers for me and raising money for me to win again. Because at the end of the day, to win, it takes money, but it also takes a lot of time and a lot of cash. And white people are financing these black politicians. That's why they don't do nothing for the black communities for the most part. And that's all of them. That's why none of them have a black agenda. So if I finance a politician, then we can demand that he has a black agenda for that community. Community cleanup, taking care of the sewage and all those type of things. We demand that he's street sweeping and clean and all that stuff, taking care of the graffiti if there's any, and all that, the overall look and feel of the city. That politician will be committed to that area because he is not only voted in, but he's financed by people of that community. He's financed by black folks. Then at that time, you'll get what you want out of a politician because you financed him. That is the crux of it. That's the problem that we have. I mean, do you really think? I mean, you look at Barack Obama. Black people didn't put Barack Obama in office. The Jews did. We didn't finance Barack Obama's campaign. White people did. And that's why he didn't do a damn thing for black folks, because white people financed his campaign. All these politicians you got around here in LA, the city councilman and the state legislator, white people are there's some black people who are giving them money, but for the most part, white people are financing these politicians. So you buy them. Buy the politicians, and you want to worry about them not doing anything that needs to be done for your community. That's the second floor. You got economics. Now you got the politicians, and you buy the politicians. Okay. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just want to get that point across. And if you look at all those black communities that we had, in history, they had black oversight. They had black investment. You know, Rosewood and Tulsa had black investment. You know, of course, they got jealous and they bombed it. We know that. The history is clear. But we were able to build that because we were organized. We got to get organized. Okay, we've got to get organized and build something. Nothing is going to change until we build our own schools, you know, our own communities. I mean, have our own buses, own own cab company, whatever it is that we need to have, grocery stores, hospitals, and we have them in our own defined community like every other race was. We're never going to get to a place where we feel safe and have a city to call our own until we build it. We've got to stop begging the very person who's a part of this oppressive system. And racism, we have to understand that race is exactly what it is. It's a race. It's a race. It's a race between two different cultures. And white people are running the race because they control the system. They control the system. So if you're talking about equal rights, you hear all these all these black leaders talking about, there's no such thing as equal. It will never be equal. We've been here 400 years and it hasn't been equal. And it's never going to be equal because you're asking white people to give up power. The racism is not a person. It's a system. And when that system is controlled by a particular race and that gives them power, they are not going to give up power. There's always this, they give you this window dressing. They give you this, they give you a distraction, right? They give you, it's a minstrel show. They say, okay, we're gonna go war on poverty. What do you mean war on poverty? What the hell does that mean? Has poverty stopped? Lyndon Baines Johnson in the 1960s said he did a war on poverty campaign. We still got poverty because that's a capitalist society. You're going to have rich, you're going to have poor. You're going to have middle class. You're going to have people that own property. You're going to have people that live in apartments. There's always an in and an out. There's a yin and a yang. There's a plus and a minus. They're never gonna get rid of poverty. That is just some. If you look at all the policies and research they've done over the last 100 years to stop poverty, and it's still here. We did all this research on police killings. They're still killing police. We did all research on the conditions of Black America. They came back. The main reason why Black America is in the position it is now is because of racism. Where has racism changed? Nope. It's evolved is what it has done. They just come up with better ways to do it. You can't be so overtly racism where you go hang a Black man from a tree, or you tell him I'm not going to hire you, or you tell him you can't move in this neighborhood. They have passive aggressive racism, like Wells Fargo Bank wouldn't loan money to Black people. They get an application with a name like Keisha on it, and the applications were denied. Or when they approve somebody like they approved Malcolm or Andre, the interest rate was higher than it was of white people. Or what they do is they come up, and that's the same thing for the job sector. Or what they want to do is when they want to get rid of Black folks, they run a highway through your neighborhood, they gentrify the neighborhood, things like that. So racism, the system is still well intact as it was 100 years ago. The system has just evolved. What it does, it pivots. You'll come up with King came up with a lot of things that helped us move forward. Then the system just pivoted. That's all it did. So you're never gonna have a safe haven in that white supremacist system. You just got to build your own system. That's the only thing I can think of. I mean, we've done everything else. I've said this time and time again. We've had 75 riots since 1955. 75 riots based on some type of civil rights violation, some type of police killing, and they're still killing us. We fought King, Medgar Evers, the legend, Honorable Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Fannie Lou Hamer, Shirley Chisholm. I mean, the list goes, James Weldon Johnson, and the list goes on and on and on and on about all these people who fought against racism. Has racism left? Nope. Is there still a racist system here? Yep. And all of them are dead and gone, and the system is still here. Because you are begging to get into a system that does not want you. When are we going to stop doing that? Build your own system. Build your own community. You know, we grew up in these dilapidated hoods, right? And then we go to school, get a college degree, sign an NBA contract, an NFL contract, or become a lawyer, doctor, engineer. What do? We move into a white neighborhood, and we feel we've arrived when we've done that. Oh, I live around the white boys. Oh, I'm arrived. When white people, Asian people, for the most part, be successful, they get a school, get a college degree, and go back to their communities. Go back to their community and work in their father's business. We get, and then it helps build that community. They come put their education, and all their work back in their community. We get a degree, leave our communities, and go make somebody else's community more affluent. Because you buy this big old house in their community, that helps their property go up. Knowing that you have a big basketball star that lives in a white neighborhood. Because they built communities, we can do the same thing. We just got to want to do it. That's what it is. So I'm going to end with that. Economics, politicians. You can beg, cry, vote, plead. How many times have we seen crying mothers on TV crying about their babies being killed? How many people has fought to talking about they're going to have equal rights? And we talked about police killings. We talked about politicians that don't do anything. What has changed? You ask yourself, just honestly, what really has changed? Absolutely zero. That's why I believe that building your own community is the only resort. There's about 12 cities for sale throughout this country that Black people can go buy and build their own community. We can build another Wall Street if Black Wall Street you want to. We can do that. It's really simple. It's not nothing hard. We just don't want to do it because a lot of us just have a slave mentality for whatever reason that is. It's just sad, man. It's just sad. You hear very few people talk about what I'm talking about. Building your own schools, building your own communities, having your own hospitals, having your own grocery store that are owned by Black folks. Very few people will talk like this because they understand that since they're being financed by the white power structure, and the white power structure won't approve of Black people building their own community because that'll scare them. That's why you hear none of them talk about it. Oh no, they won't talk about this. And it's the last result. It is our only result. Next week, we're going to talk about the courts and the policing. When you have a Black community where you have an economy, you build a thriving Black economy, and you have the politicians that you financed to support that community, then you own and control the courts and police. You got Black people walking into a court that's controlled by white people. Hell, I went to court and the only thing Black in there was me in the judge's robe. I ain't got a chance in hell. How about we have court systems that are owned and controlled by Black people and policing that are owned and controlled by Black people? Would that be a difference? That those police and those judges live in that same community? Oh, we're going to talk about that next week. One last thing. People ask me, this is some kind of I'm changing the subject. People kind of ask me throughout my life and just recently, what would I rather be called? Black. This is my food for thought. 2 subjects you guys can think about. What do I like being called, African American or Black? And I would always say that it doesn't really matter. I'm not really too big on caring about what I'm called, just as long as it's respectful. But the one thing I will dig on that just a little bit is, I'm up to the point now that I think about this question a lot. And I'm like, well, that I'd rather be called like a native Black man or a native Black American or a native Black. And here's why I say that. It's because the race, according to the Bible, for all you Christian and religious folks, the Bible says, and the Bible shows, the research shows that the Garden of Eden was in Africa, in the African continent. So Adam and Eve were made from dirt, right? And I ain't seen no white dirt, brown dirt. So they were people of color. According to, so all you people who don't believe in God, who are atheists, all the archaeological research and evidence that was found shows that the race began in Africa. So technically, everybody has African in them because that's where the race started. So a white man that moved from Europe to America could be an African American because the race started in Africa, and every lineage is from the race, the first men and women on this earth that were in Africa. Every human being in the lineage before that, after that, has African in them, pretty much. So anybody could be an African American. It doesn't really drive me, a black man, either way. It doesn't really speak to us because, again, you can come from Asia and you come to America. You can call you an African American because your people begin in Africa because that's where the race began. So anybody, any other race that comes to America could be technically an African American. That's my feeling on that. So I'm a native black man in America. But like I said, I'm not offended at being called African American. I'm just giving you African American. I'm just giving you food for thought. Just think about that for me. If the race started in Africa, then anybody who comes from this country, wherever you come from, could be considered African American. But they wouldn't want that because then you have too many African Americans in this country, and that would be a problem. It really would be. That's just something to think about. I mean, you have a difference of opinion, but I was just thinking about that. I had this one white person ask me about affirmative action too. They weren't a fan of affirmative action because they were under the impression that affirmative action is just for black folks. Well, and I explained to him, I said, this is why it's important to know your history, because the first affirmative action was done for white people. See, a lot of people don't know there were two constitutions. Amendments 1 through 12 that started in 1789 were for white people. If you go back and the history of 1 through 12 were for white men. That was for the Jeffersons and Alexanders and the Washingtons and all them. That constitution was made, and Adams, all people constructed the Constitution. That was made for them. Okay. So because the first 1 through 12, it wasn't for black folks because we were still slaves. As a matter of fact, it was to keep us in the lowest element of society. So that's Amendment 1 through 12. That's the first half of that's the first constitution. I call it the first constitution. Now there's also the second constitution was made for black people. The 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, and all the civil rights that the king was able to get passed. That was the second part of the Constitution, which were made for black folks. And that was pretty much driven by the Republicans. But of course, as we know, everything, because what they did was after the 12th Amendment and then the Emancipation Proclamation, black people were freed. The power structure said, we got to give black people something. We got to do something for them. They're free. So they gave us 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. Now, how did that help us? Nah, not very much, because all they did was come around. They just worked around it. The 13th Amendment, what they do? The 13th Amendment outruled slavery, right? What they do? They transferred the power from the individual to the state, started sharecropping, started the convict lease program, started Jim Crow. They arrested us, throw us all in jail, and put us right back on the plantation. And the 14th Amendment, I believe, was giving us citizenship. Giving them black folk. I believe it could be the other words, but it gave no, I'm sorry. Yeah. 13th Amendment was outlaw slavery, except if you committed by a crime, and you know how they worked around that. All right. Then the 14th Amendment was actually just giving us black folk citizenship. Okay, fine. They gave us citizenship, but what else they give us? You got 4 million black folks in this country. You give them some citizenship. You don't give them any food, resources, jobs, property, nothing. They let them fend for themselves. So what'd you free them into? Then you got the 15th Amendment that allowed us to vote. That was passed in 1890, right? By 1892, Mississippi came up with grandfather clauses and poll taxes to stop black people from voting. So even though they had a second constitution that favored black folks, we still didn't get anything out of that. So the first amendment, 1 through 12, that was the first thing, affirmative action. Here's the second thing, affirmative action. After and a government giveaway and protection for white people. After the Civil War, the South was destroyed, right? They had millions of acres of land just destroyed. What they do, the government handed that to white people, gave them loans, gave them land grants, gave them everything to build land. That's the government handout. That's affirmative action. After World War II, the GI Bill, when they gave white soldiers money to build houses, but wouldn't give black people loans. That's affirmative action. Then we have the latest affirmative act, the Title IX, and affirmative action that says 15% of America of government funding and business has to go towards minority businesses. Guess who was the biggest beneficiary, or received the biggest, or the people who got the most out of affirmative action that was supposed to be from black people? White women. Yes, white women benefit the most from affirmative action. So I was telling this white guy, I was like, look, man, if you want to know who benefit from affirmative action more than anybody else, you need to look in the mirror. It's been white people. It hasn't been black folks. So you saying you don't like something that your folks benefited the most. You say, well, I didn't benefit. I said, if you have ancestors, most likely they benefited from affirmative action. And that affirmative action allowed white people to build a system that we see today. So I just had to share that with you. Yeah, so I just broke it down. So I always remember, there's two constitutions. There was 1 through 12, and then you got 13, 14, 15. Here's another thing too, really quick. People, the thing they tell you about the Industrial Revolution, when we were, breaking free from Britain, they're trying to say that they wanted freedom. America wanted freedom. That wasn't what America went to war for. So we celebrating 4th of July and all that stuff. That's why I don't think black people should celebrate 4th of July. The reason why America went to war with Britain is because the kings over in Britain, the heads of Britain, whoever they were going to pass a law because Britain was outlawing slavery. Around that time, America was you had the 13 colonies that were under British rule. So British was going to pass a law to outlaw slavery. And Jefferson said, oh, hold up, wait a minute. Jefferson and all these other, Thomas and all these other dudes said, oh, hold up. And Livingston said, oh, hold up. We still need our slaves. This is the late 1700s. And that's why America went to war with Britain, because Britain was going to get rid of slavery and make America get rid of slavery. So if it was up to Britain, slavery would have ended in around 1779, 1778. The 1770s, slavery would have ended then. But no, America wanted to keep us a slave, and it didn't end to just about 100 years later. Slavery as they know it. Again, it just pivoted. It was still slavery after 1865. It just changed. Okay. So these are some important things we have to know when you want to celebrate America's freedom from Britain and you want to celebrate 4th of July and all that stuff. You got to know the irony in that you're fighting to get freedom from Britain, but yet you're enslaving black folks. That doesn't seem just a little off to you, but you want to celebrate that holiday? Okay. These are the things that we have to keep in mind. These things that make you go, to make you think about it a little bit. But anyway, that's it. Next week, I'll be back to talk about courts and police. We cover economics, building our own economic infrastructure. We talked about about the politicians, how we buy the politicians, which makes them committed and endeared to investing everything they need, and all their policies are for that, building that community, and they're committed to it. Not all these empty promises and all these, and all that stuff that they do nowadays, that won't be happening anymore. So next week is going to be really good. We're going to talk about courts and police. No more police killings when I'm done with them. No more police killings. Happy Father's Day. God bless. For those of you who watched here on Facebook and those of you who watched on YouTube, tune in next week. You guys put your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think. Suggestions you may have, thoughts about what I'm talking about, things you agree with, things you don't agree with. And but at the end of the day, let's get something done. God bless you guys. Thanks for watching the Kingdom Hood Conversation. See you guys next Sunday, 5 p.m. Take care.